Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Guys Who Stare at Stats. I'm Cade Kennedy alongside Connor Gray and Andrew Santangelo. Folks, we hope you enjoy the show today. As always, feel free to subscribe, like the video, leave a comment down below. We always want to hear what you have to think. But as always, the most important question of the day, fellas, how are y'all doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Final Four Saturday, the best sport in the world's coming back on Thursday, just 2 days away. I couldn't be more happy right now.
Yeah, can't wait for some baseball to get started, and obviously the climax of the NCAA basketball tournament is almost all the way here.
Sir, I'll have you know the best sport is already on. The XFL. No, I'm just joking. It was a fun game the other day, though. I don't know if you saw the DC-Houston game, but watching former Big 12 refs nearly destroy the entire game, it was great. Seeing people that I've seen ruin games a handful of times and watching them do it again. It was a fun time. And it was at DC, so we get the beer snake as well. But it's always a fun time there. But we have some football stories to actually get to before we actually get into our main topic today of basketball going on. We've got to start with the Lamar Jackson trade request that technically came out a long time ago, but we're just learning about it now with Lamar tweeting it out. And so it brings up the interesting conversation to have now. If you're the Ravens, where in the world do you go from here? If you're Lamar, where do you go from here? I mean, the Titans possibly could chase him. The 49ers are a possibility that's been thrown around, but that'd be a little bit weird to handle, especially with how Brock Purdy just played last season. There's some teams to go to. The Colts are another one. There's a lot of options to go here.
It's a weird situation. Obviously, the Ravens have messed up the situation, and now it's gone to where it is, and he wants out, and rightfully so with the way it sounds like it's been handled. But here's the thing. Whatever team's trading for him, I'm being cautious. I mean, you're going to have to give up a lot, one. Two, you're going to have to lock him up to a giant deal. And here's my issue with it is obviously he's talented. Obviously he's up there. But, I mean, how much you willing to give up for a guy who hasn't proven himself in the playoffs? I mean, is he that much better than, say, like a Dak Prescott? I mean, you look at some of these guys in the league, and this is where I'd be cautious with the prices. Is he going to beat Mahomes? No, he's not going to be better than Mahomes. Is he going to be better than Josh Allen? No, he's not going to be better than Josh Allen. If the Jets end up getting Aaron Rodgers like expected, is he better than Aaron Rodgers? No, he's not better than Aaron Rodgers. And I can keep going in the AFC. I mean, that's just three guys right off the bat that I'm not going to sit here and say he's better than, and he's going to have a tough time beating. So I think, I mean, you have to be careful, in my opinion, what you give up because you could set your franchise back. Because here's the other thing is he obviously wants out of Baltimore. Things didn't go well. Who's to say you trade for him and things don't go right there and now you're losing him within a year anyway? So you got to be careful, in my opinion.
One thing I will say is that the last two seasons he's just made it over like would be the halfway point because last 2 years he's only started only played 12 games, and some of that has been through some injuries, but he's missed significant amount of games if you're just talking about the last two seasons, and also just hasn't been a proven winner as a quarterback. Like we've seen how like the MVP year he had, which is over almost 4 years ago at this point, he's proven he was really talented. He had so much potential, but one thing I can say give him is that he doesn't have, when it comes to like weapons, he's never had like definitive. I don't recall any really definitive weapons that I can remember. He might have had someone, but the team as a whole there's just not enough skill. Also, it just doesn't help that his running back core the last few seasons just been getting injured. So that one's not on him. That's just some training issues going on there. He's never had a definitive receiver that I can name off the top of my head. But on his own, he's really talented, and his arm is actually much more developed than where he was when he entered the league. And I know people like to make fun of him, saying he's just a running back trying to be quarterback. I'm like, no, he can throw. He's made, like, if you look at when he's played, he's fantastic. But that's when he's healthy. But when he's playing hurt, it really drags down his performance. And when he's just not able to play, it makes people wonder, should I even go for him? And I can somewhat understand why the Ravens haven't been really keen on wanting to give him a big contract, because Yeah, I think the issue is I think he wants I don't really know what he really wants because he keeps constantly flip-flopping on what he really wants, and he's just being very I don't really know the right words to say about how the way he's acting on social media, but I would say I would like to think he wants a big guaranteed contract, like something like what Deshaun Watson has to an extent, but the Ravens are not willing to do that because there's too much risk in it if he gets hurt and is not able to be there to perform in the playoffs, especially after last season. He just could not get healthy enough to be there for the team in the first round that they could have actually gone on with, even where he probably might have been able to run for the division round. I don't know how severe his injury was to be able to, if they would have gotten past the wild card round, but that's just something that they really got to figure out on his own. He's got to either be willing to go with this trade. Hopefully, he's got to hope the trade works out and that he can stay healthy for another team, or eventually cave in, try to make a deal with the Ravens that might not be what he wants. But it'll have to come down to, does the office just move on without him, or will they try to play ball with him? I think there's blame on both sides of the issue, but because it's more a lot of the media attention is on Lamar right now, it makes it look like we don't know what he really wants. And obviously people are blaming the Ravens organization, which there is blame there. I'm not going to pretend that they haven't lowballed him in this, but I just don't know what the solution is right now.
Well, you're absolutely correct. And here's the thing, though, in my opinion, you mentioned the weapons, and you're right. His best weapons are Mark Andrews, one of the better tight ends in the league, and then Marquise Brown, who obviously was traded. And, I mean, things went south with him and the Ravens, too. So I think that goes to show kind of the way.
I just didn't think of Marquise Brown.
No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying that they moved him. It's the way the Ravens have gone. And I think that goes to show the way they've handled these contracts, too, because it didn't go well with Brown either, and that's why he wanted out. And to your point about the weapons, though, and here's my issue, is if you're going to trade him, you're going to have to give stuff up. And let's just take those teams on the screen right there. I mean, if he goes to Washington, does that make Washington better than the Eagles, Cowboys, or Giants? I don't think so. You guys might disagree. If he goes to the Falcons, what weapons is he going to have there? Nothing's going to change. I mean, yeah, he's got Kyle Pitts, but, I mean, outside of that, nothing really. Tennessee Titans, they obviously traded A.J. Brown. They've been struggling receiver-wise. 49ers would be the best bet, but to Cade's point, they already got a log jam. But my question to you, Cade, would be, does Lamar Jackson make you better than Brock Purdy or Lance?
My answer would be yes, but I think it also depends. I mean, we've talked about the Ravens. We all know the system they like to play, and they have that run-first system they like to do. I just want to give you just think about this for a second. And this is obviously, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think he would go to the Titans. But just imagine a Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson read option. Just imagine how fun that would be. I just want you to contemplate on that for a few seconds. Just imagine if that was to somehow happen. That would be a fun offense to see, but at the same time, you've got to be able to throw the ball. Connor, you mentioned it, Lamar Jackson's arm. It has improved. If I had to guess today, of those 5 that are on the screen right now, I would pick the Colts just based on the Colts are kind of that revolving door of quarterbacks right now. This would be the 6th or 7th straight year, it would feel like, that they've had a new quarterback come in for 1 year, and then who knows what happens after that. But like you mentioned, Andrew, if Lamar went to the Commanders for something, for example, they're not going to beat the Cowboys. They're not going to beat the Eagles. They might be better than the Giants, but that's still a coin flip scenario, and anything could happen when those two get together. The Falcons have already committed to Ritter. They're going to tank for a while, that division, even though it's winnable at times. I mean, we all saw what happened last year. The Falcons have their own plans going right now. So it's going to be interesting to see. And the other reason I have this specific section of the article mentioned here from ESPN, the asking price. We already mentioned it. Connor, you said the Deshaun Watson-like contract, that's Lamar's asking price right now. And the compensation, 2 first-round picks. Do you want to give up 2 first-round picks to maybe compete for who knows how long? We don't know how long Lamar's going to stay healthy for a season.
I would say the only, in regards to trade of what, and if you just first 2-round picks that the Ravens are asking for, that would have to come down to if a team is in win-now mode and have picks to give. And there's not very many of those teams, and certain teams are already looking at have already looked at other options whether they picked him up in free agency or they're looking on another trade, like the Jets wanted to get Aaron Rodgers, per se. But the thing is, like, Colts, like, I would agree. Out of all the teams on here, Colts would be the team to go for, because 49ers, I don't think are gonna do or would go for him, mainly on the basis of Brock Purdy played really well, and they like having him, and you also have Trey Lance, who you paid. Okay.
Don't worry about that.
It's like paid a lot of money for. Not a lot of money. They spent a high third round, not third. Okay, that's
don't worry, folks. The reason why we're all kind of looking confused is our wall is currently falling down behind us, as you can see in the window we have right here. I don't want to completely cut you off, Carm, but I do want to mention, just as a running joke here, I have had to just patch this thing how many times in the last few weeks? Nearly every time I come in here, this thing is falling down behind me. So if you just see a random bright light on your screen whenever I reappear, I'm not going to mess with it for now. We'll mess with it later on in the show. But
they spent the third pick, I believe, was the second or third pick on Trey Lance. And so you're paying a lot of money for him on his rookie contract, but he also didn't help. He got hurt early on in the year, and even the games he played, he wasn't really doing much. Then you went with Garoppolo, and then Purdy basically comes in and plays just exactly how you need him to play. Play really well, doesn't lose a game until the NFC title game. And obviously he gets hurt really early and had to get surgery, basically equivalent, I think was like Tommy John.
Basically.
So,
I can't remember the exact.
I just know it was something equivalent to that. But but according to comments from what the Niners GM has said, I think you're probably looking at possibly Purdy if he was healthy, by the time the season started, he would be starting over Trey Lance. That's what he supposedly has said. I don't know. No one's really confirmed if that's what he actually said, but I think on investment, you'd still try to get Trey Lance, and I don't think the Niners really have much to give in regards to first-round picks. So I don't think the fact that they're even listed on here, that's not going to happen.
So I'm actually going to counter that, and that's why I asked you, Cade, if Lamar Jackson makes them better. And you said yes, because I agree with you. And I actually think if there's one of those teams that should do it, it is the San Francisco 49ers. And here's why. And my other team would be another team that's not on there. We went through the Colts, Commanders, and Falcons. You're going to trade everything up to get Jackson. You're not in position to win. The one team on there that is in position to win is the San Francisco 49ers. And you don't have to trade as much draft capital, in my opinion, because you have a young guy in Brock Purdy. You have a young guy in Lance. If you're getting Jackson, you know one, if not both of those quarterbacks are going a part of that deal to Baltimore to try to save Baltimore from tanking for a quarterback, because that puts them in position. They'll get a bunch of second-round picks, maybe even one first-round pick, and you get a quarterback to add. So in my opinion, I agree with you. It does make the 49ers better, and that's why they should do it. Because, Connor, you talk about the weapons that Lamar Jackson's never had. Imagine him on the 49ers with Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle. That puts them, I think you could argue them with Lamar Jackson. They could be the best team in the NFC on paper.
Actually, I was about to say that because you brought that up. I was like, you trade probably more likely. They're more. I think out of all the two quarterbacks, they're probably going to trade Lance to keep Brock, especially with how well he played, and that he's a viable backup for Jackson whenever Brock is back and healthy. But Lamar has less pressure on him because you have to worry about McCaffrey. You have Kittle. You have Dabo. Why am I messing up names? I know.
Are you thinking of Debo?
Debo.
There we go.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Happens to all of us.
But you have too many. But that team, with the weapons that they have, that works perfect for Jackson. So that does actually make sense now that you actually brought all that up, because I just wasn't thinking about it. I'm like, they have Brock Purdy. What do they have to worry about? And then it's like, oh wait, they can just get rid of him. If you don't want to worry about Lance possibly becoming a liability for you, you can just trade him off for Lamar.
Well, because here's the other things. You dealing with two guys that both got hurt last year. Listen, we all hope they come back healthy and the best they've ever been, but you don't know that. We've seen baseball players with that type of surgery go down and never come back to the same guy. Yep. Who's to say Brock plays that good ever again in his career? And obviously, again, hopefully he does come back healthy and better than ever. But there's no guarantee of that. So get a guy who you know is going to go out and perform. And that, real quick, that's why my other team here, same thing with a bunch of weapons. And you could trade a young quarterback who was out most of last year, and that's the Miami Dolphins. I think Lamar Jackson makes you a better team than with Tua. And if you're going to give Lamar Jackson, Tyreek Hill, and Jalen Waddle, I mean, that's almost – I mean, that would be a fun division to watch too, like just watching those guys battle it out. So, again, it's maybe you might say it's not fair to those quarterbacks, but that's part of the game in the NFL. And, again, Tua would go to Baltimore, have a chance to prove himself there because, again, especially with his injuries too, you don't know what these guys are going to do next year.
Andrew, you mentioned the AFC. I want to throw out an even funnier scenario here because there's some rumors I'd heard, and keep in mind this is just still speculation at this point, obviously. But I'd heard someone brought up the idea of Lamar to the Patriots or maybe something like that, trying to trade Mac Jones away or some situation over there. And imagine just that AFC East where you have Buffalo, you have Aaron Rodgers going to the Jets, you have Lamar at the Patriots, and you have the Dolphins. You want to talk about a cutthroat division right there. If that was to all happen, my goodness. And then, of course, the scenario of if the Jets just decide to be the classic Jets and go after Lamar instead of Aaron Rodgers, which would make no sense whatsoever at this point, but you can still see them doing it. They're the Jets.
I will say the system that San Francisco runs is very obviously good with Kyle Shanahan at the head. It's a much more friendly system to quarterbacks, and I think it would also giving him behind that offensive line unless some deals happen in the offseason. It's a line that will be able to protect Jackson more, and I think Jackson would be able to play practically the whole season. Unlike in Baltimore where he's had to play hurt because his line didn't protect him. And I understand with Baltimore system it's more run happy than pass happy. So that's another thing where you can if Lamar can rely on his arm more instead of having to run first and chance of actually hurting his legs. So that's where I think it would work better for Lamar if he went to Frisco, because he's definitely been dealing with more injuries ever since he's been with Baltimore.
But that'll take us to our next segment. I did not expect us to have 17 minutes of Lamar conversation, but hey,
no, there was more.
I enjoyed it.
About it.
I enjoyed it, but that takes us over to a completely different sport, over to basketball, the NBA standings as we look at it. Folks, it's almost playoff time. It's hard to think April's around the corner, that playoff push going on. When you look at the Eastern Conference right now, Milwaukee trying to establish themselves as the 1 seed, but Boston just 2 games behind, and the Sixers and Cavs have already punched their tickets in, all in the top 4 there. Things start to get interesting when you move down to the 5th spot. The Knicks are in the playoff hunt, not the play-in hunt, the playoff hunt. The Knicks are continuing to play well right now, 11.5 back out of first, and the Nets are just a few games behind them. And it's weird to think it's a Nets team that, yes, they're not going to be as great as they were with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving when they were on the court at the same time. But it's still a fun Nets squad to watch, and they're still playing scrappy out there. And then the Heat, Hawks, Raptors, and Bulls all currently in the play-in right now, but only 3 games out. The Wizards are trying to claw back in with the Pacers and Magic as well. The Hornets and Pistons already eliminated.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much the top 3 will fight for a spot in the NBA Finals. I think they're a tier above a lot of the other teams. I will say the matchup to look out for is where do the Heat fall? They're starting to play a lot better. If I'm the Sixers or Celtics, you want to avoid the Heat. I mean, you give Jimmy Butler a chance in a 7-game series. Who knows what's going to happen? They have an experienced coach, an experienced team. Miami's the team out of that group. As a Sixers fan, I'd be much more afraid of than Brooklyn. So I'm someone that's really hoping Brooklyn holds on for that 6th spot for that first-round matchup. Knicks, obviously, there could be a tough matchup, but I can't see them getting by the Bucks. I think in the 2nd-round matchup. I could see them beating the Cavs, though, if that's the way it held up. But, I mean, again, I think Milwaukee, Boston, Philadelphia will be the 3 teams fighting there for that conference or the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, but obviously I'd say top 3 teams have. I know they're not. I know Sixers are not that much different from where the Cavs are, but I still feel like those top 3 teams are your favorites, regardless of even if Sixers fell down to 4, they're still they'd still be favored over the Cavs for a deep playoff push. Obviously, Milwaukee's the team to beat, along with the Celtics, with the way they've been playing most of the season. So it's going to be some fun basketball down the stretch.
It absolutely is. And then you look at the West, where there's just no separation, folks, in the West. I mean, that's been the story the whole year, but you can't get a clearer picture than right now. Denver and Memphis trying to battle it out. The Nuggets 3.5 games above the Grizzlies for the 1 seed. And Memphis, I mean, they're continuing to play well. You get John Morant back. The Grizzlies have won 6 in a row. The Kings, I mean, we talked about it a while ago. The story of the year, so to speak, Sacramento, 45-30. They are right on the edge of making the playoffs for the first time in a long time, folks. So
going from being one of the absolute worst teams in basketball last season to now they're right on the doorstep to claiming the third, probably a third, and if depending on how things go, they could get that second spot. But it depends on how things line up. And I just love how looking from 4 down to where the Jazz is on the list. It's like there's like you said, there's no separation right there. Almost all those teams could. Within a week or two, everything drastically will change.
I mean, that's really how it's been. You've had a few weeks where, you know, if Oklahoma City wins 3 of their 4, Dallas loses a few games, the Lakers lose a few, the Pelicans, you know, maybe split and go 2-2. Everything can drastically change. And, I mean, the 4 seed, the Suns, Kevin Durant about to come back. He's set to return today against the Timberwolves. There's a possibility the Suns can maybe catch the Kings if they get enough breaks to go in their way. But otherwise, Phoenix obviously going to be an insanely tough 4 seed to deal with. The Clippers only half a game behind them. The Clippers, I mean, continuing to play good basketball as well. They've won 7 of their last 10.
And I was gonna say, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was gonna say, like, any team that has Kevin Durant, that's gonna be someone you don't really want to mess with quite a bit. I mean, obviously, Suns have. Obviously, I know having Kevin Durant back will definitely help the Suns out a lot more, but that's still someone you don't want to really mess with any one time you have to go up against Kevin Durant.
And then you look at the 6th seed, the Timberwolves. They just got Karl Anthony Towns back. They're getting healthy. And then 7, 8, 9, and 10, all separated by 1.5 games. The Warriors, Pelicans, Lakers, and Thunder. Then the Mavs half a game out from that play-in spot. And the Jazz only 2 games out. So, like we mentioned, 4 through 12 separated by 5 games. I mean, there's no other way to put this. It is as tight as it could nearly be in the West.
Yeah, I kind of feel bad for the Kings. I mean, you look at finally make the playoffs and you're going to get matched up. I mean, they're ties. So imagine Golden State gets that 6th spot. Hey, welcome to the playoffs. You get to start with Curry and Klay Thompson. I mean, it's just unfair. You think it'd be the opposite, 3 versus 6. In that sense, Warriors being the 3. But no, it's a shame some of these matchups with how close they will be. I mean, you look at a team like the Clippers, 2 great players in George and Kawhi Leonard. I mean, 2 guys that would have to face off against Kevin Durant, Chris Paul, Devin Booker. I mean, that's a series that you could argue would be better than whatever ends up being the Eastern Conference Finals with the amount of talent in that first-round series. And those 2 teams would battle it out. And, I mean, I could see either one of those teams making it to the finals. I mean, you look at Memphis and Sacramento, 2 very young teams who could be pretty vulnerable come playoff time. So we'll see how it shakes out. The playing game will be pretty wild, too. You got a lot of talent there. If you think about it, LeBron James, Anthony Davis could all be in there, along with Klay Thompson and Curry if the season ended today. So, I mean, it's weird. And even if the Mavericks get in there, now you got Luka and Kyrie both in that playing game atmosphere as well. So, and there's a lot to go for here, about 6 to 7 games left, depending on which team you're a fan of, and we'll see how it all plays out here in a week.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, Connor, anything could change here. We could come back next week and everything could be completely different. There's no telling what is going to happen here in the West.
And literally just on a day-by-day basis for me, obviously as a Thunder fan, it's like I got to find out if they're out of the play-in or in the play-in. I mean, because they can't make up their mind if they want to be in the playoffs or not.
Yeah, I mean, no one can. I mean, just every single game, I mean, you get down to the wire here, means so much. And, I mean, for Dallas, just absolutely brutal for them. Just, you know, when you play the Charlotte Hornets, you would expect that it would be a not an easy win. There's no easy wins in the NBA, but a game you should win, but instead you get run off your home floor and then run off the floor in Charlotte. And, I mean, that might be the death knell for Dallas there. Portland deciding they're going to tank the season away and give Damian Lillard some rest there. So the Blazers aren't going to be a factor. And, of course, the Spurs and Rockets are so far out of position, they're trying to get a certain Mr. Victor Wembanyama instead.
Can Damian Lillard get traded this offseason? I'm so tired of him missing the playoffs.
Yeah.
He's just staying loyal to Portland. He just wants to stay there.
Can they do something to win?
It's like playoff.
No, Andrew, that's not allowed.
Playoff Damian Lillard is the best Damian Lillard because he's so entertaining to watch. The fact that we have not seen him in the playoffs for quite a bit is just a darn shame because it's like I love how everyone outside. I love how almost everyone wants Damian off the Portland Trail so he can go win something, and then he's just like, no, I'm just gonna stay because he's loyal. Man, I can respect that, but it's just one of those things. If you're just as a basketball fan, you just want him to. You just want to see him win.
I mean, like you said, I respect it. Would I like to see him win more? Of course I would. He's a great player. He's fun to watch. At the same time, he wants to stay there, and that's something you really don't see a whole lot of. I mean, we went through the whole super team era. You could still argue it's still going on right now, especially with the move the Suns made to get Kevin Durant and pair him up with Booker and Paul and Ayton there. What a fun team that is. It's just interesting to see. You don't see that a whole lot in this era. You really don't. But we've talked a little bit about the NBA. We're going to work our way down to the college side because it's the Elite Eight happening over the weekend, and true to form with everything else that has happened in March Madness this year, just craziness all about it. We're going to start with the most, I'm not going to say normal game, but the most, I guess, boring of the four. UConn taking on Gonzaga after a back-and-forth first half. UConn just absolutely obliterating the Zags, 82-54. UConn just controlling the entire way.
I mean, with the talent that UConn with all that talent that UConn had, because Oklahoma State had to play them in the non-con, and I'm not surprised to see UConn to be in the Final Four, but I didn't expect them to just absolutely just slap Gonzaga the way they did. I mean, I know Gonzaga has had. I don't think this is probably one of the weakest Gonzaga teams they've had in the last 5-6 years. I mean, it's still a really talented Gonzaga Bulldogs team, but I arguably say it's probably the weakest team they've had. But I'm not surprised how good UConn is, but I just was surprised just how easily UConn handled them. That's what really stuck out to me.
Yeah, UConn was underseeded coming in. They had an unfortunate, I forget what was that, a couple injuries to start Big East play, and that's why they dropped off a little bit. And I was reading an interesting thing the other day. UConn is actually undefeated in non-conference play. And obviously that includes the March Madness as well. All their losses coming inside the Big East. So if you go outside the Big East, this UConn team is undefeated. And, I mean, I think it goes to show how well they've been coached. I think it's a shame. Drew Timme got a couple tough, questionable foul calls, put him in foul trouble, and had him sit on the bench for a while in this game. And that's when this game really went out of hand. Not trying to take anything away from UConn, but they were playing with them until he had to go on the bench for a little bit. UConn really pulled away. And by the time he was able to, they threw him back in. I think it was already 15, 20 points. And it was too late for him to save the day for him. So we'll see what his status is. He's still got another year left to come back, which is crazy to think about. Feels like that guy's been there for 10 years. He's the new Perry Ellis of basketball, college basketball. So it'll be interesting to see. I think he's projected a late first round in the NBA, so we'll see if that's enough for him to leave, or he tries to go one more year and up his draft stock. But no, credit to UConn, very well coached team. I mean, I read too if they end up winning it this year, it'd be their 5th championship, I think, since 2000, and the next closest is 3. So
I thought it would be 97.
What?
You said it's their 5th national title since 2000?
I think I read 2000, maybe 1999. But credit to them. I mean, you look at the job they've done, the amount of different coaches they've had, too. They've been able to still win. So, and they bounce around in a couple different conferences before going back to the Big East. So, I mean, credit to UConn staying afloat.
I had the year wrong. It was 99. What you said 99. So They have 99, 204, 11, and 14. So if they win it this year, it would be their fifth since 99. So you were pretty much right on. I thought it was years, like 3 more years before. I was thinking of another team.
Anyway,
No worries.
Anyway, yeah, UConn getting an 82-54 win there, and anytime you can hold someone to shooting 10% for three, especially someone as talented as Gonzaga, how they like to play offensively, just every once in a while, UConn has these runs they go on, and usually when they do, a Final Four trip is inbound, and they're going to Houston once again. And they're the only ones that have made it to Houston out of any of these teams. They're the only ones that have that Final Four experience because, folks, FAU did it. A 79-76 win over Kansas State. And the Owls, for the first time, going to the Final Four. And you want to talk about an underseeded team. We mentioned it with UConn. FAU, 35 wins on the season, the most out of any team in college basketball. Only got the 9 seed. They were ranked in the top 25 for a while this season. A lot of people felt they were disrespected coming in, and they've proven people right.
It's crazy to watch this run that they've been on so far. Credit to Kansas State for a great season. I mean, it's a shame to see Noel kind of go out like that. Tremendous game he had. I thought he was going to carry them, get them to the next level. As you mentioned, Cade, everyone's first time since, or besides the UConn, I mean. And the one that surprised me there before we get to their game is Miami. I was shocked that they've never been to the Final Four before at their history just as a university. But no, the Florida Atlantic team keeps fighting. They're able to play well defensively, and credit to credit to Kansas State's defense is keeping them in it, forcing 22 turnovers. You think that'd be enough to win the game, but somehow Florida Atlantic's defense able to contain Kansas State shooting wise and force them into some tough shots and able to climb back into it.
Yeah, one thing that really surprised me was Florida Atlantic has never been to the tournament before this season, and in their first year in it, they go to the Final Four. And they're obviously going to be the team that everyone's going to be probably rallying behind because they're going to consider the Cinderella team, even though the way they've played practically the entire year, they've been really dominant. So, obviously, congrats to them. I'm happy to really see someone like Florida Atlantic make it this far because usually teams like them don't really get that far, especially the conference they're from. They're in a smaller conference, and usually those teams at most only get to like the Sweet 16 and at the rarest of moments get to the Elite Eight. So it's not really something to see.
Yeah, and you mentioned those 22 turnovers, Connor. I mean, this is an FAU team that likes to play fast. They mentioned it a lot during the broadcast. It's weird. FAU averages 9 turnovers a game. You would think with 22 would be enough to seal their fate, but when you have a fast-playing team like that, it'll be interesting to see, especially with their matchup against San Diego State, and we'll talk a little bit more about that on our next show. But just that high-flying attitude they have, they called themselves the Beach Boys. We'll have to see if they can bring that energy all the way to the Final Four. But it is going to be a fun time there. And that brings us to the other Beach Boys, if you want to call them that. I don't know why our computer decided it wanted to mess up like that. But Miami and Texas, there we go. I don't know. Macs are weird. I don't understand these computers sometimes. But 88-81.
Macs are great.
Macs are not great. I am a Windows person. That could be its own debate, but that's not sports topics. We can go on about that forever. But Miami an 88-81 win over Texas, and the Canes are going as well. Jim Larinaga, we talked about him before, always getting him and Boeheim up there, both gyms that have been around forever. Boeheim finally retired, and Larinaga, for the first time since his George Mason team made it back in 2006 in the Final Four again, this time with Miami, of course. And like you mentioned, Andrew, it's weird that Miami, we know about them, of course, in football. They have the great baseball tradition as well. It's weird that basketball, kind of the missing piece there, and now they've added to that legacy.
Yeah, no, it was crazy when I saw ESPN put up that that's when I first saw it. They put up a graphic, and it said never, 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 and then whenever last time UConn was in it, I forget the year they were in it, but no, it blew my mind. And to your point about the two gyms, they are twins. If you look at pictures of them next to each other, they look very much alike. But no, Miami went out here. Credit. I mean, it was a battle. They go down midway through the game, go down there's 13, 14 points. And I think everyone was like, okay, this Texas team, it's been dominant all year. Is going to be able to close it out. They have the experience against a lot of tough Big 12 teams and closing out games. And all of a sudden, here comes Miami. They find a way to climb back in it. I think it started with
Just a moment here. I'm looking at the broadcast here, and I realize that it's showing Creighton, San Diego State. So you can keep talking here. I'm just going to try to figure out if I can fix this real quick. Maybe, maybe not. We may just be permanently messed up here. But anyways, you can keep going.
Credit to them. Even with their struggle shooting, I mean, they only shot 25% from behind the arc, and they're still able to come back and win this game. I mean, that's just like unheard of in today's basketball. And I think a lot of credit to them in the sense of that they battled, came back, and then obviously they get that call at the end. I agree with it. A lot of people were saying it should have went the other way, but I think it was the correct call there. And Miami takes advantage of the foul line and
because the Miami player though they were still pretty close to each other. He jumped straight up. The Texas player backed into him. I understand he's trying to block him up, but he kept going, and it caused the Miami player to flip, and that's on that is on Texas. It's like, as much as people don't were mad at that call, I'm like, that was the correct call, because it's like, it's not one of those where it'd be different if the Miami player tried to jump, put his body over the guy and try to grab the ball, and then he backed up. That'd be different. But the Miami player went up, and Texas player backed and made him fly over him. So that's where I'm definitely with that the referees got the call right. And at the end of the day, Miami, Texas had a double-digit lead. They failed to protect it, and they cost themselves the game with some bad decision-making, and Miami just capitalized on opportunities given to them. And Miami played very well down the stretch. I mean, they played some lockdown defense right at the end. That was really good job by Miami, and I was just happy to see Texas go down overall. But I was also surprised when I found out Miami has never been to the Final Four. I was like, wow. And kind of thing, they're the only power conference team that's actually that would be considered a power conference to make the Final Four. Because is the Big East still considered a power conference?
I would consider power conference.
Yeah,
okay,
you've got, I think it's like Power 6 when it comes to basketball, because the Big East stands out. So we have our power matchup and our non-power matchup, essentially. But I want to look at the just game flow chart here, because ESPN always provides these. And, I mean, you guys mentioned it with the big run Miami had. Just you look at a starting point, 11-point lead for Texas, 64-53, 12 minutes to go. And Miami just slowly catching up. But it was weird to see, because, I mean, Texas is in Kansas City, a place they had success earlier this year with the Big 12 tournament. I'm not going to say Texas was rattled, but they were definitely thrown off their game for a bit. And that's something that you really haven't seen with the Longhorns at any time this year. It was something that kind of came out of nowhere. And credit to Miami for capitalizing on it, riding that wave of momentum, and making it all the way to the Final Four. That's really all you could say there. And, I mean, it also helps when you have someone go perfect as well, 7 for 7, 13 for 13 for the line. Miller played absolutely fantastic. And that brings us to our final game to talk about in the Elite Eight, San Diego State and Creighton. And, folks, this was another fun one, just down to the wire at the end. You had the controversial calls, I guess you could say, both controversial calls if you really want to get down to it, of whose ball was it really at the end of the game, how much time was left. Everyone agreed on point two. The ref said, no, this thing's over with. And then the foul at the end of the game, San Diego State getting the free throw. It is a foul. We can all agree that is technically a foul, but I think it brings up the argument of, do you call that there in that situation at the end of the game, or do you let it slide?
So, first off, this was a phenomenal game. Both teams battled throughout. Again, just a very defensive game here. Both teams going back and forth. It's funny. It was defensive and both teams holding each other low scoring-wise. So it wasn't like we're watching a lot of teams throwing the ball out of balance, forcing turnovers, and it was getting annoying watching a bunch of turnovers. No, it was just good defense, forcing tough shot after tough shot, and having find a way to win. And to your point here, Cade, we were robbed. We were robbed of 5 minutes of overtime, and I will die on this hill. what happened here is if you want to take out the rule book, go to whatever page, whatever section of the rule book that call is, go for it. You can make the call, I guess. But when you look at it and you look at all the other games going on in this tournament, especially that weekend, you look at the other games, 39 fouls, 38 fouls, 35 fouls total. You're looking at both teams over 20 foul shots per game in those games. You turn on this game. You're watching this game from front to end, or start to end. You have a total of 17 foul shots taken between the two teams. Barely, I think it was 26 total fouls. You've let them push. You've let them shove. You've let them be physical, elbow down low. You've let them go, everything go the entire game. And then you come out and make that call in that pivotal spot. If you're calling every ticky-tack foul throughout the entire game, you don't go for it. This is where I turn to. It's similar to every other sport. All you want, I mean, we all know it's human nature. Refs are going to miss a call. No ref is perfect throughout an entire game. All people want is consistency, and you didn't get that in that call. And you look at baseball when you just have an umpire. That's like the umpire changing his strike zone there in the top of the ninth inning or the bottom of the eighth inning. You look at. I'm going to bring it up. It's like the Super Bowl call, too. I mean, that's why the only reason why that call was controversial is because it wasn't one other holding call in that game when Bradbury got called for the hold at the end of the game. It's you let him go the entire game, and then you make that call in the most pivotal spot of the game. And here, you had two teams fighting throughout the entire game, going back and forth, and you make that call when it's a tie game. The last shot of the game, we should have had overtime. They should have let 5 more minutes decide the game, and it's a shame because I do think Creighton got robbed there in that 5 minutes for another 5 extra minutes. Again, if you want to take out the rule book, go to section, whatever, I guess technically it is a foul. Even I still don't even think there was much contact. Was there contact? Yes, but I've seen a lot worse, let's just say that, than what happened on that play, and I don't think they should have made the call.
I have no I didn't get to watch this game, so I'm sorry if I provide very little to this conversation.
That's okay.
It's like the other games I was able to watch, but I never got to see this game.
Yeah, to me, it's one of those that, and you make a good point for it, Andrew. There's the letter of the law. Is it a foul by every rule in the book? Yes, but at the same time, it annoys me, and I don't know how many times we've seen it this year in a game where the final 5 minutes are officiated differently than the first 35.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't make any sense, and it will never make any sense. I mean, I saw it happen when OU played Kansas this year up in Lawrence. Perfectly normal officiating the entire first 35 minutes, but then magically in the final 5 minutes, no one can breathe on each other, or it's a foul. And I don't know what the obsession is, and this is not just, one specific conference or one. This is a league-wide thing. If you're going to call it in the first half, you have to call it in the second half. I'm not asking for refs to be perfect. No one is going to get every single call right, and if they did, every basketball game might be 3.5 hours, especially in college. But be consistent. If you're going to call that at the end of the game with everything on the line, you better call it the rest of the game. That's where I stand on it. Is it a foul? Yes. Should it have been called there? Technically, yes, but, I mean, does it match the flow of the game? No.
Well, and you look at it, that foul for Creighton was their 6th of the half. Mm-hmm. That foul didn't even put them in the bonus. That's how no calls they were making the whole game. San Diego State had 7. The Creighton was only shooting a 1-and-1 at the time, too. It wasn't like you had 15 fouls on one side, 13 on the other side. It was 5-7 before that call, 6-7 after that. That's why I have huge issue with it, is because you let them play the whole game, and it's a shame. The end of the game, wanted to touch on that one real quick. I don't really care as much on that because you're getting maybe 0.2 of a second. You're gonna have to put a lob up at the basket for it anyway. It would have been tough. And I mean, I watched that replay just as much as anybody else probably at the end of the game. I definitely couldn't tell. And I think the best case if you're going to put clock on there, because the clock did run out and you weren't able to assign possession, the only way you would have done anything, and I think this might have leaned into the decision, was the best case scenario if you did put .2 back on there, was you were going to have to do a jump ball, and San Diego State had the arrow in their favor. So regardless, even if they put 0.2 back, I think you're getting San Diego State's ball anyway.
And that's what I wanted to see if you agreed on that, because that was my kind of positioning there. Was I think it was going to be San Diego State ball anyway. There were some clock issues going on that entire regional, it felt like at times, where, did the clock even start on time on that play? You would have had to go through, review that whole thing, and that might have been the conclusion they came to anyway. But, folks, it'll be a fun Final Four. That's all we could say. We'll talk about that hopefully on Thursday this week. I think we can hopefully be all here for Thursday, maybe not. We'll see. There will be another show at some point this week, but that will wrap it up for today. A lot of topics to get through, none in terms of, going one by one, but just such a fun time. We're in the thick of it in sports, folks. It's always a great time. But like I said earlier, if you like the show today, feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're watching on Twitch, feel free to give us a follow at NWTV7. That is NWTV7. But for Andrew Santangelo and Connor Gray, I am Cade Kennedy saying have a great one, everybody.